Hello, everybody. Today we are working with colored pencils doing food illustration. If you would like to grow as an artist and you can't afford an art class, we've got everything you need here at Art Prof: critiques, tutorials, and professional development. This is part of my Bread Fairy series, and I wanted to continue this method of working with colored pencils, working with the physical pressure of the pencils and trying to build up really vibrant colors. The link to the reference photo is in the video description below. And by the way, there's a whole album of this tea and scones party. So you don't necessarily have to use the exact same reference that I'm going to be using. As you can see, there are many photos of the various teacups and the scones. Take your pick. And then also the link to the art supplies are in the video description below. What I'm going to be using is this Stonehenge warm white paper. And by the way, a big thank you to Legion Paper for providing the paper that I'm going to be using today. I really like Stonehenge warm white. It's got a little bit of a kick to it, not so sterile looking like the straight white paper. And I'm using two different kinds of watercolor pencils. These are the Magnus colored pencils. They're really thick, and I love them because they're good for filling in larger areas. And then I also have another Dur set, and these are the thinner kinds like this. I like having the two different sizes. I don't know if I'm going to use this. This is a mono sand eraser by Tombow. It's good for erasing colored pencil. It does get your paper a little bit torn up if you use it too much, but it's a good option if you want to do a little bit of erasing with your colored pencils. Please draw along with me in any media, and you can join me in the Discord afterwards to chat about your work in the post live streams channel. Okay, what I started here was a light pencil sketch, and note how many times I had to redraw things. The spoon was over here at one point. I moved it over here, and I did do some minor changes. For example, this plate and this tablecloth, you'll notice in my drawing, they're overlapping. Now in the reference photo, they're not. There's a tangent there that was bothering me, so I decided to change that. And then I also shifted a little bit the positioning of this. So the materials, the objects are the same, but I moved them a little bit to my liking. The reference photo is a guide. That's it. I can mess with it as much as I want. Everybody do this with me. Now that I have the line sketch going, I'm going to squint to figure out where to begin. And really what I'm seeing is that this plate really leaps out. This plate is the star of the show. And I think to make that more apparent, I'm going to fill in some of these large patches of the red and the brown. So we'll work with the negative space and then push into the positive. That will be my process. And by the way, I will be working for a little bit, and then every now and then I'll go and I'll check the chat. So if I don't reply to you right away, it's not because I'm not going to, it's because I can't look at the live chat and draw and talk at the same time. It's too difficult. Right now, it's just blocking in. I'm not putting down the physical pressure that I will do eventually, but I don't want it to be light either, because at least this area is pretty dark. I might lose some of these lines. So actually, I'm going to make this line darker so I don't lose that line. This line will be fine. This might be a little bit too red. I think I want something a little bit more like burnt sienna. It's a little bit too red. It's one of the things that can be tricky. Yeah, I'm just going to stick with this. That's fine. It doesn't have to be so precise. And notice the direction of the colored pencil is pretty deliberate. because this is actually the wood grain that's in the table. And so I think that's pretty important to observe the direction of the strokes, because I think sometimes people, they look at this space and they say, okay, I just color it in, but it's not really like that. Now this is a little bit different because this whole red area doesn't have the wood grain. And so I'm going to make strokes that I think are going to show the direction, which is this diagonal. I feel like I'm cheating a little bit. I mean, the bread fairy did this for me. Like, she set up this composition, not me. And really, half the image is the setup. So I feel very lucky that she did all that work for me. It's a lot of work to set up the still life. I like doing the negative space first because it's a chance for me to really just fill, which is a lot of work in the beginning. And then also you see the shapes of the objects a lot more clearly. And that I think is very helpful. Pressing down pretty hard because there's no doubt in my mind that this is going to be a rich, very dense, thick red. Not holding back right now. And also I have this line sketch, so I'm feeling pretty confident that I'm not going to have to make a lot of major changes in terms of the location of things. So if you have a pretty solid line sketch, it gives you the ability to be more confident with the colored pencil. I mean, people have different ways of using colored pencils. My way of using it, I like showing my strokes. Not everybody wants that effect necessarily, but for me, I like it to be a little coarser. There might be some areas that I build up more densely, but I enjoy that way of working. Some people do colored pencil like, looks like an oil painting almost. All right, so you can see just blocking that in, you already get a gist of the location of things. And actually, let's pull out this spoon a little bit more. So remember, you don't have to use the same photo that I'm using. There's a whole album of tea and scones and raspberry jam. So yeah, you don't have to worry about using the exact same reference. In fact, I think it'd be really cool for a bunch of you to try some of the other references, because I think there are some images in there of the actual scones before we baked them. All right, let's do some squinting. I think I want to beef this up. I just want that to be a little more dense. Yeah, because now the plate is a little more visible. And here I'm going to really press down. When I tell people, listen, if you press down and your notepad is shaking, you're doing it right. At least if you want to draw like this. If you want to draw differently, that's a different story. All right, now what I'm going to do is just place all the colors. This little trivet, I love this trivet, and I'm really regretting that I didn't buy it because it was at Trader Joe's, and I'm just sad because they don't have them anymore. I really should have taken advantage of that. And here I'm not going to press that hard. I'm just trying to map out what color is what. There's so many colors here. Tell me in the chat who is drawing along and what are you drawing? You don't have to draw what I'm drawing. You can totally just work on your own stuff. But it is really fun when I get to see what people make, because I guess the bread fairy is inspiring everybody, including myself. One of my favorite comments that I got was, bread fairy, my mother-in-law, in case you don't know what I'm talking about. She has this really cool tool. She was cutting pickles and carrots and stuff for it. And it's a tool that her mother had in like the 1960s. I mean, it really looks like it belongs in a museum. And somebody wrote me this really nice message. They said, this really reminds me of my grandmother in the Soviet Union. She had a very similar tool, didn't have a handle on it. I just love that connection. Hearing your personal stories and how our personal stories can relate. All right, let's take a quick glance in the chat. Want to see what people are up to. Cool. So Phyllis is doing this while she works on her dog portrait commissions. Terrific. Seven Angelic says, it's kind of like the Queen of Hearts was having tea. Oh, this is a good tip from Phyllis, and I wasn't aware of this. Watercolor pencils work different than standard colored pencils. It's all about the binder. Yeah, Phyllis, you're our resident colored pencil master. White Varuntorn says, first time watching Art Prof live. Thanks for creating such helpful videos. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Tell me in the chat, is this your first time watching us live? Maybe it's your 50th time. Whichever is totally cool. Yelena says, I'm surprised you're going in so hard so fast. I've seen everyone else go very light and then build it up to make it more matte. Personal colored pencil style is Chris Hong's. Never seen his work before, but yeah, I don't use it the conventional way. A lot of the times people note that. They say, well, typically this is what I see, and you're doing it all differently, which is fine. There's no correct way. Ooh, Coley Moly, first time watching live. Awesome. This is also a good technical tip. Seven Angelic says, when your top layer of pencil won't accept any more color, you can put a quick layer of spray fixative on it to give it tooth. That's wonderful. And I do that with Caran d'Ache crayons as well. You can put spray fixative on top, and it just creates a very thin barrier. So that way you can continue to layer. Because really that's the key to a lot of these colored drawing materials, is to layer and layer and layer, and you can create different levels of density. Like there's some areas, this area might stay this way. This area I'm probably going to bulk up more. This I'm definitely going to bulk up more. Here I just wanted to lay out the colors. Marky says, I'm looking for a medium for my golden years. I love that. Oh, sorry. I didn't know Chris Hong is a woman. Sorry about that. Okay. You see how much time I spend on YouTube? Not very much. More squinting. All right. This teacup definitely needs, I guess it's like yellow ochre. Let's just start with this color, which is not quite brown enough. But what I have found with colored pencils is oftentimes the color you want is not in the set. More often than not, that's the case. So sometimes you have to put down a layer of one color, put another color on top of that, and then that's how you can get the colors that you want. It's such a different way of working than, say, oil paint, where you're making the colors. But what I do like about working with colored pencil is that it does force you to put down a color. I think sometimes with oil painting, it's easy to just sit there and mix and mix and mix. And then before you know it, it's all muddy. At least for me, that's my eternal struggle with oil painting. Tell me in the chat, which do you prefer? Do you prefer media where you mix your colors, like oil paint or acrylic? Or do you like more of this type of approach, where the colors are there and it's a matter of you layering and mixing them? I don't think I have a preference. I think it's just, what is it am I trying to achieve? What kind of look? This is a pretty detailed image. This is not something I would want to do in oil paint unless I had a lot of time to do it. But with colored pencil, I really can get the details. Like this plate would be horrible to do in oil paint. I mean, it's not that you can't do it. It's just it would take a long time. Just feel like the colored pencil is a lot easier. All right, right now I'm just quickly sketching in. You can see there's like little variations of shadows in the red tablecloth. And so I just want to get a little more variation so this doesn't look quite so flat. I find for me, I need speed with my colored pencil drawings. If I draw too slow, I just find I lose my confidence And I like putting down marks in colored pencil that really want to be there. I don't like them to be hesitant. And so that's why the line sketch is so important. I spent a long time in the line sketch before the stream started. And that's one of the reasons I can be so bold right now, is because I spent time on that and I don't have to worry about the locations of things. Oh dear, this trivet is going to drive me crazy. I have to really look at every single one. I'm probably going to have to use some of the white colored pencil here, because at least this like frosty blue color doesn't really exist in the colored pencil set that I have. Oh geez, I have to like count these. Blue, red, white. Okay, there's a green one back there. Thank goodness they're colored. Can you imagine if it wasn't? That would be a big pain. But I guess I like colored pencil because it really taught me color. I don't know, when I was using acrylic, I just was mixing things to death. And that really did not bode well. And with this, I can't do that. And so I tend to keep my colors a little bit more visible. Oh, there's a beautiful tint of lavender. Oh, that is gorgeous. Another thing I do is, if I know something is very bright, like it is on the spoon, I just won't draw there. I'll just leave it until I'm really ready to put that in. Yeah, actually the spoon is really purple. I was not anticipating that, but this stroke here, it's very purple. In fact, I think I made it too gray, but that's okay. Oh, this has a shadow. Okay, I'm a little screwed because I moved this. So I'm just going to get, I mean, the shadow probably does something like this. I think the important thing with this shadow is that it goes over onto the table. So there's our shadow. The lighting is not that dramatic in this image, but I want to show a little touch of that at the very least. Otherwise, it's going to get a little muddled. And I'm so glad we have this draw along today. You know why? Because I've been meaning to do this all week. I was like, okay, put this aside. You need to go and draw a little bit for your mental health. This is important. And I just never did. It's too easy to tell yourself that other things are more important. Who here does that? I feel guilty sometimes when I have precious hours to work and it's business hours. I'm like, oh, I need to work on getting sponsors for Art Prof because we want to not die. And I'm like, yeah, that's really important. I can't justify it sometimes, but it's like, oh, the spreadsheets, the schedules, it's so boring and tedious. Like I cannot even describe. I'd much rather be doing this, but it's hard to say that this is more important than getting sponsors and making sure the platform has the budget. But at the same time, though, I should not be totally ignoring this. Tell me in the chat, who here does that? It's like you're sort of afraid to give yourself art time. It's a strange thing. Or you feel guilty, or any other number of things. And so here, there's this pocket of black, and I'm going to use blue because this is orange. So we're going to get a little complementary color action in there, which is super fun. You know what I like about this little dish? So this is a sugar dish. And there are certain dishes in the Bread Fairy's house that always stay in the same place. For example, she has this little, I guess it's a basket woven duck, and it sits on her kitchen counter, and it's always there. It never moves. She calls it her soap duck. But this sugar dish goes everywhere. It's like it travels. Sometimes it's in the dining room. Other times it's in the kitchen. Sometimes it's next to the liquor bottles. And I like that a lot of these feel like characters that move around throughout that space. because I have to say, I was surprised at how much people enjoy the bread fairy work. I guess it's, I don't know, academia telling me that something like this is shallow or sentimental. And I'm like, I don't care. I love this. I love this experience. Screw academia. I want to give a shout out to Sonnet18. Thank you so much for the super chat. We greatly appreciate your support. Holy Moly says, sometimes I feel guilty making art because I think I should always be studying art theories and principles instead of actually doing it. I don't know if that makes sense. Oh, it totally does. Half the time I'm like, this is not deep enough, which is stupid. But I get that. Or if it's not that, it's something else. Oh, I should be promoting stuff more. I need to work on my photography skills for social media. Yesterday, I was thinking, oh, I should resurrect our Facebook page because I want to reach a broader demographic. But then it's like, oh, I have to come up with a strategy and I have to, it just like hurts my head to think about that stuff. But what am I going to do? Our issue right now for Art Prof, it's a marketing issue. I mean, it makes me sad because the thing is, the people that have found us think we're awesome, which is great. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm just saying you guys are very dedicated as an audience. And it's like we get so many comments. People are like, why are you not more popular? I'm like, I don't know. YouTube hates me. I had this conversation with my husband yesterday because we were trying to figure out why the anatomy videos have gotten so little attention, which makes me sad because those are so much work to put together. Probably the most time consuming other than the linear perspective tutorials. But we were trying to figure out, okay, is it the thumbnail? Is it the title? Which is it? And that stuff just sucks the artistic soul out of you sometimes. Oh, that's really satisfying. I really like that. Margaret says, guilty of not drawing along live, but very helpful as colored pencils are among my sketchbook starters. Need to take the sketchbook as a study break more seriously. Oh my God. I have like mega sketchbook guilt. I rarely do it. And when I do it, it's just, which is fine. I mean, that's what a sketchbook is supposed to be, I suppose. But what I do in my sketchbook, it's so inconsistent, which I guess is fine, but it doesn't feel like a practice. It just feels like, oh, there's a sheet of paper. I'm going to throw something on. Attagirl says, hire somebody to do the amazing marketing stuff. Amazing as an art teacher. I'm sure there are people even here who would love to help. You don't have to do it all. That's really nice, Attagirl. But you know what's funny is even very simple things require supervision because we have a fairly established brand and we have to make sure that the tone of the marketing is accurate, which is hard. You would think it's not that hard, but it is because I actually had a couple interns doing YouTube comments for me and they couldn't do it. They didn't do it in a way that matched the tone we wanted because I think what's really hard is that we're this strange hybrid of being willing to dance and do silly things and talk about guinea pigs. But a lot of us are rooted in academia. I mean, academia was my whole life. And so it's a strange combination. There aren't a lot of people that understand both. And that's challenging from a marketing point of view. Brian says that Art Prof has a TikTok, huge way to gain popularity. We just got on TikTok. Blech. Check us out. It's just Art Prof. And we're working on it. Rev says, as an older person just starting to try to learn to draw, watching the artist on Art Prof really helps me learn how to see. I'm getting better at truly observing. That is such a great comment because people always think that art is about the doing. And it is. I'm not saying it's not. But learning to see, that's half the battle. training your eye. Because actually, I released this video yesterday on figure proportions. And there's a lot of stuff online about, oh, the human figure is 7.5. I can't talk today. I'm sorry. The human figure is 7.5 heads tall. And there's always some people like, no, it's 8.5 heads tall. I'm like, have you guys looked at the world? Like, just look at who's walking around on the street. Do you think any of those people truly fit 7.5 heads tall? I mean, I'm sure there are some people that do, but a lot of people don't. And so Kat and I were talking on that stream about, okay, well, if you can't use these measuring tools, it's not that you can't. I don't like them. I mean, if they work for you, that's fine. But we were talking about why maybe it would be better to do something else. And we were talking about how, well, the way to really do it is to observe. But nobody wants to do that because observing is a lot of work. It's a crazy ton of work. And I think it's just easier to say, oh, 7.5 heads tall, I nailed it. But when you have to use your eye and look really hard and investigate, a lot of people don't want to do that. But ultimately, it does get faster results. And it is applicable to everything. Because if you're drawing a landscape, I can use those observational skills. I can't look at a tree and say, oh, that's 7.5 heads tall, I know what to do. And so my thought is that it's, of course, way more work to train your eye. But the thing is, that's a skill that's going to carry you in all forms. It's not limited just to the human figure. And a lot of people will say things to me like, well, I'm really good at drawing unicorns, but I cannot draw a toad. I'm like, it doesn't matter if you're drawing a toad or a unicorn. It comes down to the same fundamental skills of looking and seeing and looking at relationships. So I think learning to see is much more valuable, but a lot of people don't want to do it because it's hard. And I get it. I understand why it's hard. But long term, it is better. This pattern down here, see how this fades out a little bit? So these here, I really colored them in, but here I'm going to let them disappear a little bit. And I'm noticing little details I never saw before, like this little pattern of dots. I didn't even see that until I started drawing. And then maybe a little hint of this. I guess a lot of my process with these drawings is picking what to emphasize. So this is very bold and dense. This is not. Same thing with these leaves. I don't feel that those need to jump out so much. So it's almost like you're assigning roles. Like you're saying, okay, you can stand out, you can fall back. I'm just trying to set things up. I'm going to shift the contrast on this because I think it's a little bit too strong. Maybe turn on the brightness a little bit so the colors are a little bit easier to see. And so for me, like these 4 little dots up here really stand out. Even the edge of this plate, which is a little bit worn, that's pretty important. You know what's really funny? I was thinking with all of our food tutorials now, and if you haven't seen it yet, take a look at my Oma bread tutorial, painting with watercolor. It's one of my favorite tutorials that I've ever made. And I was thinking, okay, if I'm going to do all this bread stuff and all this food stuff, I should think about trying to get sponsors for the food items because it's a whole other world and there's so many people that you can approach. And I was like, okay, what does the bread fairy use? And I was like, everything she has is from a thrift store. Like she doesn't have a lot of things that are bought from a company. Her favorite thrift shop is this place called DI. It's in Salt Lake City. It's called Deseret Industries. And I can't remember, but I think it's run by the Mormon Church. And it's this huge thrift shop. I mean, I had no idea thrift shops could be that big. I've never seen one that big before. And she gets almost everything from DI, which I love, but you can't really approach DI to sponsor your video. It doesn't work that way. So I don't know, maybe KitchenAid, because we do use the KitchenAid, but everything else is like a tool from her mother or something that's not from a company. So yeah, we're gonna have to see what we can do about that. I mean, I love that everything's from DI, and a lot of these things that she gets. She showed me the spoon that had this pearlescent oyster thing on it. She's like, yeah, I got this for 50 cents. I'm not good at that treasure hunt, but she loves it. So we find ourselves going to a lot of these places. All right. Oh, you know what? This needs to be colored in. So this is really nice. With colored pencil, the layering makes it so easy to do this. If this was oil paint, I couldn't do this without waiting for the layer to dry. I mean, I guess if it was acrylic, it would be fine. But I love that I can put those patterns on and then put this right on top. That's awesome. And actually, if you look at the lower section of here, there's a lot of shadow. So I'm going to bulk up this bottom. Oh, and there's a lot of shadow here too. I don't know if this purple is a little bit too much, but let's just try it. I'll put it in fairly light, so if I change my mind. This is challenging because it has so many details on it, but you have to show the detail and you have to show the form at the same time. So the shadow here, that's the form. The pattern is here. Oh gosh, and these little curls are all 3D. It looks like somebody like put a pastry bag on top to make that. I don't know how I'm going to get that effect. I may not. But you can see adding that shadow really changes our perception of that space. All right. Oh, I need to do the same thing on the plate. Okay, does everybody see this? This area is bright white. This is not. This is a little bit of a tint of a tannish color. And actually, I need to erase this. So let's see if my mono eraser helps. I don't know how much it's going to do. That's a little bit better. Okay, that's worth it. You just got to be careful. You don't want to use it too much because it can rip, well, not rip up the paper, but it can make the paper a little bit coarse. And if that bothers you, that might not be a good thing. Yeah, that's pretty good. And maybe I'll pull up a little bit here. Because really, it's the clotted cream. That's so good. In fact, we had this whole discussion about, well, do you put the clotted cream on first and put the jam on top, or do you put the jam on first and then the clotted cream? And my husband's family was like, well, I think in historical England, they did or didn't. I don't know. Maybe somebody here from Britain can clear this up for us because it was a whole thing. I think that's too gray. I need something a little bit, maybe a little touch of like a bright orange. It just feels too dull. I'm just a little worried that I just made the value a little bit too much, but we'll see. Oh, that might be too orange now. That's fine. I mean, you have to swing back and forth. And I was thinking, I do want to preserve the sketchiness of some of these because what's very interesting about a lot of these scenes at the Bread Fairy's house is that they don't last very long. This was only like this for 5 minutes because within a minute, somebody's going in on that scone. And I like this idea that these are ephemeral moments. They're not there forever. They're only there for a moment. And so I like this idea of a series of sketches as opposed to something that feels so permanent and established. It's a sketch that's temporary. It's not here forever. And I like that idea a lot. I'll tell you, she's challenging me with these patterns. Who here likes to draw patterns? I don't. Although I think I'm going to have to make myself like drawing them because if I don't, I'm going to go crazy. But they're really hard. Tell me in the chat who here finds patterns difficult. I'd be surprised if you said it was not because they're so hard. There's a lot of yellow in here, but I think I see this red pattern that's in between the blue. So I'm going to press down real hard over the lightish blue. And so that then allows me to get both. And then I can go in and add some darker blue in between. And then this too also has a lightish yellowish tone. I think this is a little bit too dark. Let me try this one. This might be a little bit too bright, but it's a little bit saturated for what I want. But you know something? The warm white of the page is helping me a lot. I'm really glad this is not a white sheet of paper, because now I can just go straight over things. Lisa says, I ignore patterns. I guess that answers the question. I avoided them like the plague. They're really hard. And have you noticed that a lot of times when people draw figures with clothing on, people don't add the accessories that people wear in their drawings. They'll just draw a plain t-shirt. And I'm like, how often do you go out and see people just wearing plain t-shirts? Like, a lot of people have a necklace on, or they have earrings, or the bracelets. A lot of people don't add that. And I think that's why sometimes drawings of people with clothing, they can come across as a little bit generic. And I think sometimes it's those accessories that really define people. Enrique says there's so much energy in Prof strokes and color choices. I love the boldness. My color drawings generally feel so static. Mess around. In fact, take a blank sheet of paper and just press. Just feel what it feels like to press that hard. It's hard to do that. A lot of people feel very nervous because drawing like this feels very permanent. But if you do it many, many times, you get used to that muscle memory of what it feels like to push down. It's a really big difference. So a lot of it is just the experience of what does it feel like to push that hard. A lot of people never had that experience. Supichaya, sorry if I mispronounced your name. Currently 10th grade. I've always wanted to major in fine arts. On the other hand, I can't stop worrying about what jobs I want to do after. Do you have suggestions for a high school student? Don't think about that. It's way too soon. Here's the thing. When I was in art school, there's a lot of pressure on people the year you have to declare your major. And everybody's, oh man, what's my major going to be? And everybody acts like they're signing their soul to the devil. I know it feels like that because it's like you write on this sheet of paper, painting, like architecture, that's who I am. Honestly, most of the people I went to school with, they're not doing what they majored in. It's not, I mean, there are few people, but when I think about it, there are way more people not doing the same thing. I know somebody who was a glass major. They work in collage now. I know somebody who went to architecture school and they're a ceramicist. And I know somebody who is a painter. They're a graphic designer now. Another person who went into illustration, but now does museum exhibitions. Not curating them, like the actual physical construction of museum exhibitions. And it's not limited to art. It's science museums and stuff like that. So I just think you're getting ahead of yourself too much. And if you let careers determine what you study, that's not good either. Because a lot of people, when I was in art school, they'd say things like, oh, well, I should go into graphic design because I want to make money. And I'm like, that's not a good reason to go into graphic design because there's no field that inherently gives you money. That's just not the way it works. I mean, you could go into graphic design and hate it and then be resentful, and then it doesn't make you more successful that way because you're competing with people who actually like graphic design. It's like, who do you think is going to be more successful? The person who's in it for the money and thinks they should do it, or is it the person that loves it and is really wanting to make a living? Don't worry about that. It's not that important. I know it feels like it is, but it's going to be such a distraction. Maybe some of the older people in the chat can explain a little bit about, oh my God, life has so many twists and turns. You just have no idea what's going to happen. Don't worry about it. I get the pressure. There's a lot of pressure on students today to do that I don't think my generation had. We just were like, like, I don't know, maybe ignorance is bliss, but we just didn't think about that stuff when I was in art school. Because the other thing is the industries, they're going to change so much. By the time you're graduating, it's not even the same field. I don't know if Blue Wool Spirit is in the chat, but Blue Wool Spirit told me that the field she's in now, it didn't exist when she was in college. So if that's true, I mean, you don't know what's going to happen. When I was in school in the 90s, and it was not the same world. I mean, we didn't have internet, so yeah, don't worry about it. So right now what I'm doing is the trivets, I'm giving each of them a little bit of a shadow because I want them to feel a little more three-dimensional. And the shadow's not complicated. It's more just a little touch at the bottom, so that way it doesn't feel so flat. Because what I did before is I just filled it in, and now I'm going in and I'm adding individual shadows, and I'm getting lost. That's blue. I literally am like counting these in my head to make sure I get the colors. I mean, it doesn't matter that much. I'm just saying, from my point of view, it's helpful, so I don't lose track of things. I may have to go in with some white colored pencil. Oh, geez, these patterns are hard. Okay, so it's not remotely close, but you can see that now the individual bulbs, they each have their own forms. And I think that does make a difference. So they're not quite so flat. I want to give a shout out to RB Dick. Thank you so much for the super chat. We always appreciate your support. Alex says, when I tried college, I thought I wanted to be an art teacher, but I quickly found out that teaching in a school is not for me, and neither was college. Exactly. Sometimes people think a field is a certain way, and then they go and they take the class. Oh, I did not think that's what graphic design was. In fact, I had a student who went to RISD pre-college, and I remember when she came, she was like, okay, I'm going to do graphic design because that's what she thought was going to be fun. And she said to me, she's like, I didn't realize graphic design was so much digital media. I don't like digital media, and this is not what I want to do. So that's a great point, Alex, that sometimes your perception of what you think you want to do is not actually what you want to do. Because sometimes you realize, oh, that's not the way I envision the field. Some people think, oh, well, if I go into this field, this is what I'll be doing. It's like, no, actually, a lot of the field is doing this. Or even lifestyle choices. A lot of people held up at RISD, freelance is such a great way. And oh, if you're a freelance illustrator and you're successful, that's the holy grail. You should all be aspiring towards illustration as a freelance illustrator. And it's like you get out and you realize, like, damn, this is sort of a sucky lifestyle if you have a family and need to feed them. Like, freelance lifestyle, unless you're extremely well established, it really is not easy. It's very stressful. It's not good for me. I mean, I hated the lack of consistency and never knowing where my next paycheck was. I mean, I think if you're single, it's a little bit easier, but if you've got a family to feed, it's really hard. So thank you, older folks, because there are a lot of perceptions about what you should be doing and what's right, but don't listen to that. You know, I didn't see this, but the scones have a shadow. I didn't think that they did, but now I'm seeing here, and that actually will help me with the clotted cream, like that. Oh yeah, that helps a lot, because then I can emphasize the edge of the scones, because the scones, they're really light, and I was losing them a little bit, but I think now that I can pull them out a little more with the shadow, that's helpful. Oh, and actually this is like a really dark area of contrast. So I wasn't trying to make the patterns really that bold because I don't want them to be the main event, but I'm noticing this one spot that's in between the two scones is pretty important in terms of getting the scones to pop. So adding just this green behind is very helpful. And then there's a lot of blue, there's all these dots everywhere. So here's an area where the stuff in between is really helping me. That space in between the objects. I think too often people get very fixated on the object, but actually it's the pattern around the object right now that's helping me. Like I couldn't do this without that pattern. And I'm not doing every single pattern. I'm going in and I'm picking which ones I think are going to help me the most. So a lot of this is about being selective. It's like you really don't have to draw everything. You can. I'm not saying you can't. It's just this pressure that, oh, everything has to be done. Nah, you don't have to do that. It's got a little darker than I want it to be, but I think what I'm going to do to fix that, oh shoot, there goes my color pencil. I think I'm going to darken this. Make this really dark, and then that will make this a little brighter. So sometimes, if you want to fix one thing, actually you should fix something else. And here too, like if I make this really dark, that plate is going to pop a lot better. I still feel like it's a little too dark, but that's okay. I'm going to leave it. And I am going to go in and do a little bit of erasing because I really want this clotted cream to be bright white. And this one needs more shadow, actually, because the white of the page is as bright as it's going to get. It's not going to get any brighter. And I'm using gray, but I think what I'm going to do is I'll kick up the gray with some yellow. So the gray is showing the form of the clotted cream, but then it's going to get a little tint of yellow to give it just a little more luminosity. I think that would be better. All right, yeah, there's a little hint of yellow there. Actually, there's a lot up here. This might be more than I want, but you know something? I think it's better to do too much rather than not enough. Like a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to do that because it might ruin it. But the thing is, if you don't try it, you might end up with something that is very lukewarm. I don't want to be lukewarm. I want to be hot or cold. You know, it's kind of like milk. If I'm drinking a glass of milk, it better be hot, scalding hot, or it better be really ice cold. Like, to me, warm milk is so gross. I cannot deal with warm milk. I think it's disgusting. So yeah, that's how you have to think about it. Here I'm pressing very hard because I want that orange to be more intense. So a lot of this is building up in layers. You're doing one layer, building on top of that. And I do need to define this more. This is a really awkward shape. There's nothing really clear cut about it. It's a, I guess that's a handmade. Yeah, it looks like it was hand built with ceramics. All right, let's step back. We're going to do more squinting. This really needs to darken. I really lost the form. I think I was trying to draw the lid separate. And it's not. It's definitely a lot more cohesive than that. And I'm going to bulk up this shadow too. This shadow really needs more. More squinting. Squint with me. Everybody step back. I used to do that in drawing class at RISD. I would make everybody get up and step back. It was very useful. This needs more dimension. It's really flat yellow. So I'm going to just pop out minor shifts of tone. I can see there's a little wrinkle here. Actually, up here, there's a lot of wrinkles. When you glance at something briefly, you're not going to see things. You have to look. Again, it's that training your eye. Okay, Boss says, how do you sharpen your pencils? Make the tip so blunt to make larger marks. Yes, you will notice that my colored pencils, they're not sharp. And there's a reason for that, because if I have a super sharp pencil, that's going to make me want to draw more detailed. And the thing is, I don't want that. I think when the pencil's that sharp, it's hard to cover a large area. When it's blunt and large, I can just fill really quickly. Because I think a lot of times one of the reasons why colored pencils so time consuming for people is because they are just taking so long to build that foundation. With this, I don't have to. But let me show you how I sharpen it. So I use a utility knife, but you could use a razor blade. And so what you do, the key to this technique, you have to put your thumb back here. Don't do this. A lot of people do that, and it's just really hard to control. And sometimes what happens is you do it so hard that the inside just cuts off. So if you put your thumb here and you move up, now I have total control. And I can just shave off a little bit at a time. You don't want to do too much, though, because oftentimes if that gets a little bit too long, it'll just snap off. But that's what I do. So that's a great question, because again, I don't use colored pencils the way everybody else does. I have this weirdo way of drawing. See, Cantrell says that the bread fairy make her own clotted cream. Of course she did. Is there anything she doesn't? Actually, we're going to get together sometime soon and we're going to make sausages. So good. She makes her own mayonnaise. Everything is made from scratch. Oh, this is a good idea. Phyllis says a little blue in the clotted cream will make it look a little more white. That's a great idea. I'm going to do that right now, Phyllis, so I don't forget. Because I think you're right. I think the gray was a little bit too gray, and now I'm paying for it. I love this community. I love that all of you give me suggestions. I'll tell you, I almost can't make the work without all of you anymore. I'm so used to having that feedback. And I think we all here recognize how important that feedback is. I mean, if you don't have that feedback, it's really hard to see your work objectively. Now, one thing that I struggle with is when to stop. Who here struggles with that? And if you say you don't, you're lying. Because the whole thing about these bread fairy drawings, I do think I'm overworking a lot of them. And almost every time that I do one, I'm like, oh, why didn't I start? Why didn't I stop half an hour sooner? I'm probably doing that right now, but I still, this object to me, it doesn't look as bumpy as I want it to look. I want some of these reds to pop a little bit more. But if I show all of you this drawing here, I was a little bummed that this got so dark, because really this is about the peaches here, 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 and here. And this I wanted to just sink back. And I did that in terms of the colors being muted, but value-wise, I think they're way too dark. I wish they were I wish they were like this. So it would have a little bit more atmosphere, because I'm happy with the peaches. These are fine. This is fine, but this, totally overworked it. So we'll see where I stop with this. And what I may do is do most of it live on the stream, but do some little fixes later on. Charlize says, loving the piece already, have yet to develop such long patience when it comes to rendering with colored pencils. I think patience is hard in general. I think a lot of us want immediate results because who doesn't? It would be a lot better. And actually, I was drawing with my niece the other day, and she was getting frustrated with her drawing, and she said, oh, it doesn't look good. And I'm like, you've been working on that thing for 5 minutes. Come on. Like, really? So everybody feels that way. It doesn't matter age or experience. We all want that. I think it's not patience in drawing that I need to develop. I think it's patience in terms of growth, because that happens to me a lot with Art Prof. I'm like, why are we growing more? And Lauren's so smart. I love her. When I get depressed about progress or lack of progress, she says to me, hey, remember when the Patreon was $200? I'm like, yeah, okay. We're doing better. But the problem is, the more we grow, the more backup we need. And so we're not at a point yet where we're growing, but our expenses are not. Our expenses are growing with us. And that's the problem right now, is that has not calmed down, and we need it to. I mean, I'm sure it will at some point, but right now there's so many things that are changing, and we have to meet the needs, which is great. I'm not complaining about the growth, but it's like the budget doesn't line up with the growth yet. So we're trying to figure that out. I think I'm not being bold enough with this. So actually, let me get, I don't know if I have a wide green. Nah. Maybe I need something more saturated. It's not really that saturated though, but then again, why does it have to be that accurate? Maybe this green will be better. And actually, this is hard because here it's not that dark because it's got highlights on it. And I want to show that these are 3D. I don't want them to look like flat patterns. So maybe if I make them pop a little more on the edges. I don't know. This thing is hard. I think if I wanted to cheat, I would put like little dots of white gouache on it or something, but I'm not going to do that. That would look silly. I do have a white colored pencil, but it's like those don't go very far. They're just not strong enough. Yeah, I'm not being bold enough here. I got to really, really press down. Because you get to a certain point, the color pencil, it's so thick, like you have so many layers that if you don't press down, you're not going to get results. So that's what I'm doing now, is I'm like really pressing down. And actually, there's this like little tint of orange here. Isn't that strange? I don't know what that's from. Maybe that's the inside of the lid. But I like that. Oh, and here, like I can show a little bit of those forms popping. Maybe that will help. This is tricky. This object is not easy. Bread Fairy's making me work. Ayane says, think you need to add an ambient occlusion / contact shadow pass to get those darkest values. So shocking how much contact shadows radically change a piece. I honestly cannot remember what that means. I totally know, I've heard that phrase and Jordan uses it all the time. And I totally sort of know what you're talking about, but I also sort of don't. So maybe you want to give everybody an explanation. Ariel says, I watch a YouTuber who says it took him 10 years for him to even be noticed. Oh, YouTube is really hard. A lot of people think it's so easy, and I'm like, no. I mean, if I look at the monetization side, because I had this friend who was like, oh, well, YouTube's so easy. You just make the videos and then the money accumulates. I'm like, no, it does not work that way. And oh my God, if I thought about how much our channel makes each month versus the time I spend on it, I probably make 50 cents an hour. That's how low the monetization is. I mean, you have to have like 50 million subscribers to really make serious money on YouTube. It's very hard. A lot of people don't realize how hard that is. So yeah, on YouTube, it's really hard. But yeah, I mean, in general, this stuff takes work. I mean, these followings, they don't develop overnight. And we like to joke on the staff about the days when we were like, oh my God, 10 people were watching us live. It's really funny to think about that. And wow, we've come a long way, but it's still a struggle. And it's easy now for people to look at our channel and say, oh, you have over 100,000 viewers, you must be doing awesome. And I'm like, we are in terms of having a following, but financially, there's still a big struggle there. So that's what's tricky, is people making the assumption that you're all set. I'm like, no, we're not all set. We're not even close to being all set, because it costs a lot of money to hire people. There's ongoing expenses. And so it's not remotely resolved. I think I went too dark here. Let's see if I can just brighten up. See, I don't like to use this eraser that much, but it does come in handy. So actually, if I pull out, actually, that's not bad. That's sort of helping a lot, in fact. I'm surprised. I guess with a colored pencil and eraser, I just have very low expectations. Like, I never really expect it to actually do very much, but that is helping me lighten up that space a little bit more. You do have to press pretty hard, though, to get anything. And actually, this rim could be, maybe it needs a little kick of orange back there. That there is like a little bit of orange. It's not much. But you know something? I think in general with drawing, I'd rather do something too much than not enough. Too much, you say, okay, I did too much. Next time, let's pull back. But if you never do too much, you don't really know what's too much. And then you're always taking baby steps, like you're getting closer, but not quite close. It's hard. This needs to be more, I had this like Naples yellow. This. If this were paint, it would be Naples yellow. Alex Rowe would be proud of me. He's so obsessed with Naples yellow. Oh, that's exactly what I wanted. Yeah, like a nice opaque yellow in that area. That worked. That never happens. I'm going to try my white color pencil. I don't use it much, but maybe it'll help me. Oh, wow. I'm like very pleasantly surprised. That's a lot brighter than I thought it was going to be. Awesome. All right. Oh, I can totally use that for my spoon, but I got to press. I mean, I'm pressing as hard as you can right now. Geez, I'm like shocked at how good this white color pencil is. I just think of it as such a weak tool, but it's, oh my God, it's totally helping me. Don't you love it when your art supplies surprise you? Like, I didn't know you're capable of that. Good job, white colored pencil. Oh, I'm totally going to do a pass of that all over. Awesome. You really helped me up here with this cup, which, by the way, it's red. That's not good. Let me see if I can pull some orange over that. Or actually, what I should do is put white over it and then maybe a little pass of orange so it's not pink, because otherwise I'm losing that rim of the cup. Oh, and actually there's like a really bright stroke of orange here. Oh yeah, and then this too, I didn't put this in. Yeah, there's actually a lot more detail in here than I thought. Okay, I think with the trivets, I'm going to make the closer ones here pretty dense, and then I'm going to let them disappear. So this one, I'm going to put a lot. This red one, I'm going to really press down and let it pop. I'll pick a few to do that, and then the rest I'll just leave. So sad. I should have bought this trivet. Anybody buy this trivet? It was only there for a month. I think it was there last fall. Totally should have bought that. Oh, pink. Okay, white color pencil, do your magic. That's kind of cool. Good job, colored pencil. Oh, it's totally giving me the thickness that I want, especially this frosty blue. I really don't have a colored pencil with that, so that's super helpful. Even this yellow is pretty handy. I want to give a shout out to Atta Girl. Thank you so much for the super chat. Always greatly appreciate your support. Tony Springs says, I used to think colored pencils was too tedious, but I love using them now. I never use them, honestly, until Julie Ben Bassett, who has done some tutorials for us in the past with Kat. She told me that she really likes sketching with colored pencil. And so I saw a lot of the colored pencil stuff she was doing. And I saw the results. I was like, wow, those are really cool. And so I started using them and I was like, oh my God, I didn't know you could do such fun things with colored pencil. There's so many materials that I rediscovered because of Art Prof. For example, a lot of people wanted me to do oil pastel. And I was like, oh, I haven't done oil pastel since literally high school. But I started doing it, and now I like it so much that I've been doing a lot of bread fairy stuff with oil pastel. I was so surprised. I was not prepared for that. And same thing with colored pencil. Like, I never thought about it as such a great material, but because people here wanted me to do it, I did it and was like, wow, where have you been my whole life? Okay, let's tackle some of this clotted cream. Oh, you know something? Because my paper is warm white, this is actually a very cool white compared to the paper. So it really does stand out. That's awesome. That's another reason I like the warm white paper. It's like a little touch. It's not gray or black, but it's enough that it does make quite a difference. Oh, I'm so happy I found this. I don't know. I always looked at this white color pencil. I was like, I don't need that. But now I eat my words. That's pretty fun. I'm going to adjust the contrast. I think it's a little bit too bright on my webcam. Maybe that helps see the color a little bit better. Jennifer says, colorless blender is awesome too. I don't think I've used one before for colored pencil. I've used them for the Tombow brush pens. And actually, Holbein sent me this color pencil blender, but it's liquid. I've never used it before. I'll try it at some point. Me Lou Art says, love the complementary colors going on in your drawing. Looks awesome. I can't take credit for that. That's the bread fairy. She's the one that did it. In fact, if you go onto our Flickr page, there's a whole collection of bread fairy albums. And one of the albums is called Pizza Dinner. And that one has a really different color scheme than what she typically does, which is these very like rich, vibrant colors. And that one is very muted. It's soft blues. And the side of her tablecloth is this beautiful ornate orange. And I was like, oh my God, I don't need to do anything. Like the work is done for me. So that's been really terrific. That, I mean, it almost feels like a collaboration because she's making the setup, she's creating the story, but I'm the one making the drawing. It's really, really cool. And it's funny because I've known her so long. Oh my God, I've probably known her over 20 years. I was so young when I met my husband. I was like 18. And so she's always been in my life. But I guess because we always lived so far away, I never had the opportunity to like really spend time with her, because what we're doing right now, we couldn't do this if I was living far away. It's just, it wouldn't happen. But now, because I can go back and reshoot and I can do multiple sessions, it's great. I mean, like that bread fairy tutorial with the bread, I mean, that was multiple times me going over there. Oh, I should use this. That's one. Okay. White colored pencil all the way. I'm going to see if it helps me with the little sugar dish. It might. We'll see. It might help me pop out some of these passages. Maybe not. We'll see. It might not be. Yeah, it's not helping that much. I do want to beef up some of these passages. Yeah, I don't think it's going to help. Oh, well, up here it is. I think the area where I did the erasing, it might actually help. Ugh, this sugar dish is really hard, though. It's just so many colors, so many textures, all in one place. And now it's getting very blue, so I think just a passive green on top. I think just everywhere. I think it got very dark. Yeah, that gives it a little more life. I think it was a little bit too gray before. I mean, I love layering. Layering is one of my favorite techniques for drawing. This object's hard. Looks like all of you are having a pretty cool colored pencil chat in there. I just love our community. We're such nerds. Whenever I talk to companies about sponsoring us, I'm like, you guys will not find a more nerdy art community than the one that we have. I'll say to them, listen, my audience, they really care about art supplies in a way that I'm not so sure you see everywhere. Maybe, I mean, maybe people do, but the degree of depth that a lot of the conversations go into in the Discord, it's really wonderful. I love that so much. Okay, a little bit more green up here. I don't want to do too much, though. I don't want these patterns to overpower. So they're not going to get anything that significant, but it looks a little too sketchy to me right now. I do want the colors to feel a little more solid. And I love these little dots up there. Those are so cute. It's hard with pattern because it's like, I don't want to do everything, but then again, I don't want to understate how significant it is. Oh, why are these little yellow dots? It's really annoying. So I'm just trying to pick out, I think this should be pretty dramatic. That is a very important line. Oh, and actually this blue, this is going to help me with the side of the scone. So if I make this a more saturated blue, look, that pulls out the scone. Awesome. I like that. Oh, and here too, I can do a little shading to show more of that shadow. Yeah, actually, let's pull the blue over into the shadow. And it's a couple strokes. Alex says, I love seeing you discover new uses for the white pencil. Art supply surprised me. There was one stream I did with Deep. It was oil pastel and colored pencil. And I never thought you could do colored pencil over oil pastel. And it actually worked in a couple spots. Margie says, more shadow around the scones, more color in the scone, not enough contrast. There's something I could do there. I think maybe my scones need a little more crunch because, oh, they were so crunchy, but soft. I'm all about the crunch. I think that's why I like the Oma bread, because the Oma bread, it's so soft inside, but there's, so, oh my God, that crust. Her bread is so good that I don't want to buy other bread because I know it's going to taste like cardboard by comparison. I think maybe deepening some of the jam. Yeah, in here, I didn't really do that. Yeah. The raspberries we got, and also the peaches, those are from this cute little farm stand. It's literally a block from my house. Well, maybe not a block, but it's really close. I can walk there. And it's in the parking lot. And I have stopped buying fruit at other grocery stores because it's so good. And it's local, and I love that. Okay, maybe that gives it a little more substance. Oh, another tip from Phyllis. You can also use odorless mineral spirits to blend. Jennifer says it's a dry, colorless blender specifically for colored pencil. I need to look into that. That sounds incredible. Alex says Prisma White is also very nice, but it does have the waxy feel to it, so I only like using it with dry media. Colored pencils, it's such a fit thing. There are a lot of people who really like soft colored pencils. I thought I was one of those people, but actually I'm not. I like the Faber-Castell ones because they're a little bit hard, but they're not really hard. Like there was another colored pencil I used that was like rock. Like I did not like it. And the colored pencils that are from Prismacolor, those are a little crumbly. I don't really like that. These are just right. And then I also like that they have these super wide ones. So this ended up being the ones that I like the most. But I mean, that's my personal preference. Some people may feel that these are too hard. Really depends on what you're looking for. I hope all of you will join me in the Art Prof Discord. I will be hanging out in the post live streams channel. And thank you so much to our top Patreon supporters. All of you are helping somebody in the world who can't afford an art class to learn visual art. That's what you're doing when you support us, in addition to all the boring stuff. That's ultimately where it goes. So everybody, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.